I didn't know how it worked, but she could gather leaves and make them stick together, and make a single punch inflict damage over time. Moisture was the only thing I could think that leaves and human bodies had in common, and Hamont meant ripple, so perhaps it was a power that sent ripples through the moisture in living things. While she was in contact, the ripples kept going, and after she let go, they'd take a while to die down. So where were we? The weirdness was somewhat like the Martian landscapes I'd seen a few hours ago, but it wasn't that. It didn't seem like I was in a dream or an illusion. This place actually existed somewhere. It was real. The smell and the feel of it were real. Not the same sort of real you think you're experiencing in a dream or creation. Like if I kicked a pebble, there was too much information. When he caught his breath, Funny said, "I'm sorry. I've kept you waiting. It looks like we're right on time." I followed his gaze, and the car was coming towards us down the desert road. It left a towering cloud of red dust behind it. It was a classic Bentley, a drop-head coupe. The driver was wearing sunglasses and letting his long curls fly in the open sea breeze. I'd seen those curls before, standing right next to me. It was another Funny Valentine. "Have we travelled in time?" I asked. "Not in time," Funny said. "Across worlds. Just a little step sideways into a parallel world." "Those actually exist? Or are you creating them with your stand?" Worlds created by dirty deeds done dirt cheap? The possibility never occurred to me. But there is definitely a world here that his stand had brought us to. A parallel world, huh? "Mr. President, do you know who I am?" I was a detective, if not a particularly famous one, but even so, it was possible people overseas had heard of me. When I was a detective in modern times in 2012, this Funny was President of the United States of America in 1920. "Lately, yes," Funny said, as the Bentley the other Funny was driving pulled up. "Hi, Jorge Joestar," the other Funny said. "You know me too?" "Hop in," Funny said, ignoring the question. Yeah, but it was a two-seater. I was super gnawed up for being in a Funny Valentine sandwich, but then the Funny driving said, "Enjoy," opened the door and got out. "Huh? In the middle of nowhere? Is another car coming?" I asked. Funny stared off in the distance, so I turned to look. 3 cars were tearing across the desert in the distance, kicking up so much dust I couldn't actually make out the cars themselves. "They're in a big hurry," I said. "It's a race," Funny said. "The Steel Ball Run. This is the second stage. The event's only just begun, but already it's packed with thrills. Success is a foregone conclusion, at least as far as the event itself goes." The Steel Ball Run. I read about that in history. This is it, huh? What's the president doing here? Isn't this more of a local shindig? "The Steel Ball Run has never once been a local shindig," Funny said. He reached into his chest pocket and pulled out a book. "Part of the Holy Scriptures, 9 volumes in all. I've ordered my men and their associates to collect and recover these." "Huh? If this is Steel Ball Run, this is America, right? And the second stage was Monument Valley. If you're using the Steel Ball Run to gather these books, I mean, you're the president, can't you just have people look for them normally?" "It requires foreshadowing and flow." Foreshadowing and flow? Oh, I knew that feeling. You don't get things to shape up right, you can't get the result you want. "What's in the book?" I asked, but before I could look closer, he slipped the Holy Scripture back in his pocket. It was a very old book, and it looked ready to crumble or fall apart if it was handled at all roughly, so I didn't press the point. "So, I said, in my adopted family, one of our ancestors was in the Steel Ball Run. It was a horse race across the entire country then, but you're using cars this time?" "It changes," Funny said. "Sometimes it's horses, other times cars. It's even been planes and blimps in your world and in this parallel world." "In my world it was horses." "That's not a world, merely a universe between an end and a beginning. When I say world, I mean the entire series of universes. What lies there isn't just space, but a history that repeats with minor variations. Once a universe passes, in the next universe history begins anew. Similar but distinct. The history of a world is a spiral staircase of different universes." Spiral staircases. One of the 14 words. Come to think of it, Funny and Poochie had exchanged a few words I hadn't understood. "I am me, but at the same time I am not. How can this be true? I believe you know the answer, Father Pucci.
Yes, I do.
Please share.
Because I can make a connection. Because I can't make the connection. Because what I create is the spiral staircase.
Very good.
At the time it had been complete nonsense, but thinking over now, perhaps it meant as follows. By I am me, but by the same time I'm not. He meant that history repeated itself, but with variations. As the universe looped, Funny would be born again as Funny, and live a similar life, but not the same one. Or perhaps their identities weren't the same in the first place. What I create is the spiral staircase meant Pucci's stand that could speed up time had been used by one Pucci or another to reach the next universe, attempting to connect history and create a loop. And he didn't believe it was a failure on his part that instead of a true loop he'd make a spiral staircase. When I said this, Funny nodded. I have no idea if this is Pucci's fault, or if it was always destined to turn out this way, but Dio considers this Pucci's sin and has punished him accordingly. Pucci was gone.
Punished how? I don't know, but I know for sure he won't return. Mr. President, why are you working with this Dio, as more or less his henchman? And who is this Dio anyway? All I really know is that the Dio from 36 universes ago wasn't just a thug who robbed the train. He seems to be fighting cars more or less evenly, so what is he? Is he not human? He's a vampire who drank the blood of the ultimate being, but that's not what makes him really terrifying. In the still ball run in your universe, Funny suddenly changed the subject. I believe they gathered 9 holy grails, was it? And Jorge Joestar played a major role, although he was forced to drop out along the way. Is that right? I don't really know much about him. Can we get to the point? Why'd you bring me here? There's one thing even Dio doesn't know, Funny said, suddenly completely serious. Here we go. What? Earlier, when Pucci was explaining the meanings of the 14 words, did he say something about the word singularity appearing twice? It was pretty vague. Something about time and the connections between people. Yes, but that is very vague, isn't it? You see, that was only a flow that I created for Pucci that allowed him to believe what he wished to believe. But he ended up with that nutso stand. Producing that was our goal. It was all calculated by Dio Brando. But there's something about the singularity bits he hasn't completely done the math on. Exactly. You aren't a detective for nothing, I see. Listen and remember this. Singularity appears twice. If you compare the universe repeating in the real world to the similar but distinct parallel worlds, there are things that only exist one time. There is no other instance of these, not even anything similar to them. The first is the body of the holy man, the pieces of which were being hunted behind the scenes of the very first steel ball run in the real world. The holy man? Yes. And the second singularity is you, Jorge Joestar, an abandoned Japanese kid adopted by the Joestar family who becomes a detective. You are born only once in this world, and there is no replacement for you in any other universe, or in any parallel world. I thought, but I figured that response wouldn't quite cut it, so I stayed quiet and tried to think. First, we couldn't prove that. Funny had called out this other Funny to provide evidence that parallel worlds existed and worked as he said, that they were similar but different. But in fact this was just... well, maybe that was a weird way to put it, but it could be time travel or teleportation of some kind, and the other Funny could just be Funny's twin and actually had a different name and was trying to trick me for some reason. All this was information overload and I hadn't verified any of it yet. If I chose to doubt it, there are any number of ways to doubt it, and the worlds this Funny could access with his stand, dirty whatever, were too many and too large. Had he really been able to search them properly? Parallel worlds were... my source was realistic sci-fi novels, but anyway, the theory was that any minute difference would create a parallel world. Having one hair more or less, the timing of a drop of water being 1 second early.
I had no idea how the parallel worlds Dirty Whatever visited were created, but without the ability to investigate them myself, it came down to me deciding to take Funny at his word. I was professionally incapable of taking anybody at their word. They even capitalised the whatever. It should be the official name. And secondly, so what? What did they want from me? So I can't actually do anything though, I said, which I guess wasn't much better than, as far as responses went. But Funny just laughed. We aren't expecting any significant action on your part. We just want you to believe what I said. That part's kinda hard. I'm doubtful by occupation. Feel free to doubt as you like. You thought a while before answering, right? Do as you always do and don't let those wheels stop spinning. I don't want you to have faith in me. I want you to have faith in yourself. I want you to believe that there is no one who can take your place. That seemed a little different than believing in myself. It sounded more like the certainty that I could do this that happened while I was using Beyond. When I failed to say anything, Funny kept talking. Listen, Jorge Joestar. I don't need an answer from you. I just want you to believe. It's almost time. Get in the car and leave this place. He opened the passenger side door. I got in and he shut it after me. Then he handed his sunglasses to the original Funny in the driver's seat. As he took them, Funny said, Thanks. I'd have preferred to handle this alone, but I understand, of course. In the blink of an eye, a humanoid stand with rabbit-like ears moved from Funny to the other Funny. All yours. I got this. Then Funny put the sunglasses on and drove the Bentley away, leaving the other Funny behind. So what was Funny going to do in the middle of the desert? Wait, was I fucked now? Dirty Whatever had brought us to this parallel world, but if he'd handed it over, what now? Were we stuck in this world? Was Funny not planning on taking me back? What about your stand? It'll come back eventually. Huh? The rule was one stand per person. The Funny from this parallel world might not have Dirty Whatever, but what was he going to use that stand to do? I looked at Funny in the mirror and saw a massive cloud rising up behind him. I turned around to get a better view. There was yellow and green in the cloud, and it was truly a dreadful sight. I was fully awake, but the feeling was the same as that moment where you realise you're having a nightmare. Funny made sure he was safely away and then turned to face the cloud. What is that cloud? I asked. The cars from this parallel world, Funny answered. The other me is going up against him one more time. What for? To conquer cars. So that terrifying man was somewhere inside the cloud? And the cars from this world appeared to be very angry. We told him this was but a parallel world and he and everything in it weren't real. I've fought that living nightmare any number of times in different parallel worlds, looking for a way to seal him or send him away. Allowing something as fearsome as that man to live free is always a threat, said the president of the free country. Behind us came a loud crack, crack, boom of lightning striking. I looked back to see Carr standing there, his hair in a single braid, his arm through the chest of this world's Funny. His eyes met mine. I have never once defeated him, Funny said, but I've done my best to learn from him, and I'll put that to use and beat him in the battle to come. Cars tossed Funny aside and took Dirty Whatever floated away, swooping back towards us, returning to its original owner. But Cars was flying after it. So you're the one who made this world. I did not give you permission, and I will not allow it, he yelled, clouds billowing up behind him. He was so terrifying I couldn't take my eyes off him. Next to me, Dirty Whatever disappeared back inside Funny, and he shouted, Let's go, Jorge Joestar. As a singularity, you have a duty to witness everything. I do not, I yelled back, and then couldn't stop myself from screaming in horror as cars got closer. Ah! Funny had the Bentley going at top speed, and he yanked the steering wheel so hard the car couldn't handle the curve and began to roll, as the world went upside down and I was too scared to even scream. Funny said, I'll say this once more, so remember it well. You are the only one like you in all the world, Jorge Joestar. Was that anything to scream while deliberately trying to kill us both in a car you crashed? The upside-down Bentley's driver's side touched down first, and I saw half of Funny's head get torn off. And before I could even think, my face slammed into a nearby rock. but I was still alive. Ah! I opened my eyes screaming and found myself lying on stone pavement, unharmed, in a square of some kind, and the first thing I saw was a water fountain with a winged angel statue. Eros, the famous tourist attraction. So this was London, West End, Piccadilly Circus. Even since the place had been built in 1819, it had been packed with people, but there were no people here now, because it was occupied by zombies. Around the fountain and on the stairs and benches and roofs and streets and abandoned horse carriages were the remains of zombie corpses and pile of dust. The light of the evening sun had hit, and they'd all died. Well, not all. I could hear groans and screeches coming from the insides of nearby buildings. The entrance to the subway was like a full-on zombie choir. My heart still pounding, I looked west, and the sun was shining between the buildings of London. I couldn't be sure where Great Britain was headed next, but if it stopped, the sun would soon set again, and the zombies that had survived in the shadows of the buildings would come flooding out onto the streets again. Seeing me staring at the dark entrance to Piccadilly Station, Funny said, "Joestar, no need to pay them any heed." He wasn't dead either. He still had all his head.